Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars rambling video. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this type of content, typically it's not scripted out, at least when compared to my normal videos, and I basically just talk about a topic that's on my mind, but doesn't necessitate the sort of research that most of my videos do. Anyway, the Hyperspace Ram in The Last Jedi was unquestionably a shocking and cinematically impressive moment. However, it did raise some pretty serious lore questions. The main issue is obvious. If hyperspace ramming is so catastrophically effective, just strap engines onto an unmanned spaceship. Hell, strap rockets onto a large piece of concrete and point it in the right direction. There we go. Now, there have been various explanations posited by both fans and the lore. For example, some have said, well, the Raddus hit the Mega Star Destroyer just before entering hyperspace. Well, it was still being propelled in real space, but at extremely fast speeds. That does make sense to me, but I think the chances of hitting a ship in this condition are extremely low, and we also see that the bridge crew of the Mega Star Destroyer recognized the threat almost immediately. If this were a sort of last-ditch, unlikely situation, then I don't think their reaction is appropriate. Regardless, it seems to be that explanation coupled with the fact that the Raddus had super high-performing shields, which sort of sheared through the Mega Star Destroyer and allowed the Raddus to survive long enough to cause that massive damage. And this is an okay, but in my mind still a kind of cheap answer. I like that a Mon Calamari cruiser has super special shields, but just generally the massive damage that the Raddus is able to inflict, and which any ship with similar shields could thus inflict, seems disproportionate even when considering the massive cost. Still, although I didn't love the lore and the explanation behind the scene, and in the movie there was really nothing, it didn't really bother me. That's why I was really shocked by how much I loved a fan explanation for this scene that I saw on Reddit, and I'm so disappointed that, at least until now, it remains just a fan explanation, because I think it fits into the lore just perfectly. As I said though, I do want to make this clear, this isn't something that I came up with. I found it on my favorite Star Wars subreddit, the Ma installation, which I read almost daily, and I'll link to the post down below. Anyway, there's the following comment by Beta Ace X. A much better explanation than the canon experimental shields that would obviously be heavily researched so that the effect could be replicated is that the only reason that the Ram worked was due to the Supremacy's hyperspace tracker, making it physically appear in both real space and hyperspace. It's a more elegant solution because it also makes hyperspace tracking less likely to happen in the future, as such technology now opens up the fleet to catastrophic destruction from a hyperspace ram. And as Beta Ace says, this is a really elegant and a really beautiful solution. I wouldn't normally just talk about someone else's Reddit theory in a video, but this is just so on point that I think it's worth sharing and disseminating. Let's back up a bit. So we know the First Order has some strange origins in the unknown regions, a territory of space strangled by storm and mazes of energy, nebula, etc., a very difficult portion of space to navigate. The First Order's origins are similarly mysterious, but we do know that they've attacked the galaxy with incredible technology, while also making use of some of the weirdness of the unknown regions. An example of this would be the Attendants and whatever methods they used to help the First Order navigate. Snoke, who seemed to have largely helped with the formation of the First Order, is also quite mysterious and seems to be largely alien and separate from much of the Star Wars galaxy. Similarly, hyperspace is something that even in-universe is not really well understood. We know that hyperdrives somehow propel ships from real space to hyperspace, allowing the quick travel of large distances, but besides that it's basically space magic. You go into another dimension, then you pop out sometime later. Because of the strangeness of hyperspace, any device which claims to track ships within hyperspace or interact with the other dimension whatsoever should also also be strange. Before the First Order's formal hyperspace tracking, any sort of following through hyperspace was limited to calculating mathematical probabilities based on exit vectors. So it makes sense that the First Order, which is heavily steeped in mystery and alien technology, would have a hyperspace tracker, and as this theory posits, that the hyperspace tracker would actually have some sort of presence in hyperspace itself. Hyperspace is also sort of a shadow of real space. Stars, planets, and other bodies have a presence in hyperspace, while technologies like mass shadow generators found on interdictor cruisers do as well. So there's totally precedent for a physical device being found in hyperspace. So the idea is that because this technology is so strange, simply having it turned on your ship gives your craft a presence in hyperspace. So when the Raddus makes its jump, it's actually colliding with the Supremacy, not in its physical form, but sort of its hyperspace shadow. And you can explain that however you want. Either the ship is pulled out of hyperspace, or it collides in another dimension, whatever. The specifics I don't think are super important. But you can do all this without even breaking the movie. All you need to do is, in the novelization or whatever else, which is where we got our other explanations, simply have a scene after the discovery of the act of tracking where one of the Raddus's bridge crew says, hey, this thing has a hyperspace shadow. The technology itself also has serious implications for the universe. Basically means that any other faction will never be able to retreat from a battle and find safe haven. Ships doing quick strikes won't be able to run straight back to their base. It just gives the faction too much power. I much prefer them only being able to guess based on percentages and the mathematics of hyperspace, at least as it was in the EU. Does this explanation break any other existing lore? Well, I don't think so. It's such an esoteric piece of technology with no real precedent that the rules are sort of up in the air. There are other examples of hyperspace-based ramming. We have the destruction of the Malevolence from the Clone Wars, but that's different because it doesn't seem like the ship had actually reached hyperspace, and we're dealing with a planet which we know casts a mass shadow body. Another one that sometimes people reference is the Devastator in Rogue One, but that's different because the ship has actually exited hyperspace and is destroying the other vessels with its residual velocity. Other cases do exist in Legends, but they all really fit by the rule and are pretty obscure anyway. But that's all I have to say about this theory. Let me know, do you think it's still possible that it could work and be inserted somehow into the current canon without breaking what was previously established? Do you think generally that it makes sense? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts and more down below. Today's question of the day comes from Laser, who asks, hey Eck, do you think Wikipedia is a fairly reliable source for Star Wars information? And that's a good question. As I've discussed in some prior videos, I've definitely had my sort of edit fights on Wikipedia. There was one about Yuuzhan Vong world ships where I had assumed incorrectly that they were a certain size, and then I went back when I was reading the new Jedi Order and changed the numbers on the wiki, and I looked in the history and I found out that this is a battle that's been going on for a long time. So that was a case where they weren't really reliable. Another would be the whole force choke thing from Return of the Jedi. A lot of people think that Luke force choked the Gamorrean guards, but in both Legends and canon, there are various sources that have said that it was actually a mind control technique. That being said, generally, I think the Star Wars wiki does have really good information just because Star Wars fans are so passionate, but there is a lot of editorialization. That's everything from fans just not understanding the context of a scene and implying more in the information than is actually implied in the primary source. We talked about that on the last episode of Tapcaf Transmissions. Or we see biases prop up in certain pages as we do with the Darth Caedus one. So just like dealing with a regular wiki, I think the best thing to do is treat the information as generally reliable. However, if you plan to rely on it, look where it comes from, the primary source, and read it yourself. That being said, despite the fact that the site has a ton of issues, I do think the Star Wars Wiki is a phenomenal source and really an incredible testament to the dedication of Star Wars fans. And I know that without the wiki, I wouldn't be the fan that I am today, and I'm sure that's true for many of you as well. Anyways, guys, that's all I have for today. If you'd like to leave a question down below, leave it with the hashtag AskEck. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, turn those notifications on, and maybe leave a nice comment down below. No pressure though. Until next time, guys, this has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.